Welcome back to Everyday Ayurveda with Kate. I am so excited to share this podcast with you with a colleague and I am sure to be friend, DhyanaMasla. She is the author of Ayurveda Mama. So very much her book is picking up where mine left off and specializing in the topic of conception and pregnancy and postpartum. And these are all things that I really pick her brain about in this episode. And she has a lifetime, literally, was raised in a community with yoga and Ayurveda. And you can definitely tell that's coming through in how she sees the world and how she sees these sacred windows in a person's life of parenthood. And we get into a lot of things that might surprise you here. I think that Dhyana's worldview is very spirit-based, and so is Ayurveda. And so I love that she's not coming in here to kind of tell you what you should eat, when you're pregnant, although her book definitely does have recipes and she does tell you all of these things. She's really talking about like, how do we orient ourselves in the most nourishing way to our life stages and life changes. And that's very much what I'm interested in learning about and talking about. And I hope that you are too. So don't go anywhere because there's a lot you don't want to miss in this episode coming up right after this. Welcome to Everyday Ayurveda with Kate, a podcast that translates ancient wisdom for modern lives. I'm your host, Kate O'Donnell. I've been living and teaching Ayurveda, India's traditional medicine, for over 25 years, and I've authored 4 best-selling books on bringing Ayurveda practices into our lives. If you're tired of battling digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, menopause symptoms, or are seeking a deeper spiritual connection and purpose, you're in the right place. This podcast is for you, offering practical, accessible advice to help you heal through diet, optimize your daily routines, and enhance your overall well-being. Follow this space for insights on a diet that heals, strategies for better digestion, sleep, hormone health, and direction for finding a deep sense of meaning and purpose. Join me, my pod people, for this empowering journey into self-care and self-discovery. Together, we'll explore how to bring balance and vitality into your everyday life. Let's do this. Thanks for being here today, DhyanaMasla. I am so excited to get your book from our publisher, Shambhala, and to be here with you and learn more about your work and who you are. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Kate, for having me.
Yeah. So guys, you may know DhyanaMasla from her book, Ayurveda Mama. And there's so many other things also that you do that we'll talk about. I wanted to have you on the pod because our books came out sort of like a month apart from each other. And I feel like yours, my book kind of covers like the entire lifespan, of the generative system and all of the different considerations that we have from an Ayurvedic perspective, sort of from the time we start menstruating and onward from there. And so originally I actually didn't even have a pregnancy chapter in there because I was like, this is its own thing. This is its own book. And my editor was like, I am so disappointed. As someone who recently had, 2 little kids, he was like, we need all of that. I'm sorry. And so I sort of went back and wrote those additional chapters on I already had fertility in there, but I added the pregnancy, I added postpartum. And then I'm like, we're just going to wait for the book, the other book to appear. Yeah. And then there it was in my mailbox, like a month later,
Amazing.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of like get this synergy going with our communities to sort of know about each other.
Definitely. Yeah. I've had a lot of women write me and ask me questions, and I recommended your book because women going through menopause, it needs a whole book in and of itself. And and your book so beautifully takes a woman on that whole journey.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'm very curious, Dhyana, about your background. It sounds like you've kind of grown up in an Ayurveda family. How did this happen?
Yeah. I have amazing parents that in the 60s and 70s, they joined the Bhakti Yoga movement. And so since, they were in their early 20s, they were traveling to India and chanting mantras and really absorbed in the process of devotion. And so when we were born, my father, he's an Ayurvedic practitioner and also a naturopathic doctor. And so I remember, yeah, from the time we were so young, he would say, hey, just take deep breaths and encourage us to, he would massage our feet every night with sesame oil and all these little practices that I didn't really understand until much later. He would be such an amazing example of, and he opened the Ayurveda Health Retreat when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And so growing up around this retreat center where people come and they stay for 3 days, 5 days a month and receive the traditional treatments, live the deep and traditional lifestyle of yoga and Ayurveda, and just like, wow, seeing how healing happens when we are placed in the proper environment. And our bodies are perfectly designed to heal if supported with the right diet and with the right lifestyle, with the right people, environment. And so it was amazing to get to see that from such a young age, and it created such a deep impression in me. So that later in my mid-20s, I studied Ayurveda more deeply, and I realized like, wow, this is also my path. And it's amazing to see, because also traditionally in India, that's how it is. It's like your dharma is what's what you've been born into. And it's not always like that these days, but it was beautiful to feel like, wow, there's such deep roots here. And now we live in Alachua. My sister and I are just taking over my dad's retreat center and allowing him to semi-retire. And we have beautiful babies here. And yeah, it's a get to share it with them now too.
Yeah. Where is the center?
It's in Alachua, Florida, so north central Florida, which many people don't know about. There's like the most magical forest, some crystal clear water springs. It's an amazing part of Florida.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And do Panchakarma there?
We do Panchakarma. Yes, we do traditional Panchakarma. Then we also have a school where we do trainings and also retreats of different sorts. All sorts of amazing healing opportunities.
Yeah. Great to know about that this is here.
Yeah.
People are always asking me, for places that they can go and sort of have an Ayurvedic experience or do Panchakarma. So this is fantastic. I'm happy to know this is kind of for those who are, in that area or close to there. That's great. I'm thinking about, you mentioned how, yes, in India, you are often born into a family business. You're like my yoga teachers, it was like a family business. I feel like in this country, it wouldn't surprise me to hear that you sort of grew up that way and then went a completely different path, and
I
rebelled.
went through that too.
Did you do that?
I went through my wild teenage years for sure.
You did. That's what I'm curious about. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So you did go a different way for a while.
Yeah, because in a sense it's like we lived in this bhakti yoga community and we were in this bubble. And so there was definitely during my teenage years a point where I'm like, wait, like what else is out there in the world? And do I only believe all this because it's all I've ever known? And so I feel like at a certain point in everyone's life, they have to step into something, not just because it's all there's ever been, but it's because, wait, I actually choose this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my teenage years were not the perfect Ayurvedic lifestyle at all.
And then, so you ended up sort of studying Ayurveda, you said in your 20s.
Yeah.
You kind of came back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I moved to New York City in 2011. I lived there for about 10 years. I started a yoga studio. We ran the yoga studio also at the Bhakti Center. And there we met our teacher, Radhanath Swami, who just deeply reminded me of the profound depth of Bhakti Yoga. And from there, meeting somebody who was so aligned with my values and such an embodiment of the practice in a way that I felt was practical in modern day life. Recommitting to the path of Bhakti Yoga in a deeper and more personal way. And then also studying, I went to Kripalu's School of Ayurveda, which I actually met you there. You taught a cooking class.
No way.
Yeah. I don't remember what year that was, but that's where I studied Ayurveda for the health counselor program. And yeah, I was wowed by it.
Right. Well, I'm guessing you felt like I did when I kind of went to school, that it's like you're learning the back end of all the things that you've been doing for so long. You're like, oh, that's why that works.
Yeah, and I feel like also, and I feel like for me, like it was really focused on Ayurveda, and what it did inside of me was this like create this deep desire to find the synthesis between yoga and Ayurveda, and really Ayurveda as a deep spiritual practice. Ultimately, you know, it's focused on matter and the material and the body, but also without the focus on spirit, it's completely incomplete. And so that's what studying Ayurveda helped me to do, is like, wow, I really want to help create the synthesis between matter and spirit, yoga and Ayurveda.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that. I love this conversation. So it kind of looks like
Mm,
you have been specializing in birth, prenatal, postpartum.
yes.
How did that become your interest, or how did this come about? Yeah.
I became pregnant in 2019, and that's where my focus completely has been since having my first baby. I have two little ones now, and during my first pregnancy, like I was reading all the pregnancy books out there, and I was just realizing, you know, wanting more of an Ayurvedic approach to pregnancy and not really finding any resources that felt complete. And also realizing how a lot of the pregnancy books, they focus on one aspect or another aspect, but nothing really guided me from, you know, preconception, conscious conception to postpartum, and also those early mama, newborn mother days, newborn baby days. And it was a calling. I felt like
Yep.
I was meant to write this book. And so after my son was born, that first year of his life was when the book was written. I self-published it on his first birthday, which for me just also reaffirms how like it was meant to be written through me, because I don't know how I could have written a book that first year of my baby's life.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
But it felt like mothers need this. I needed this. And I was sharing on my social media pages, and everybody was like, I wish I would have known this during my pregnancy. I wish I had this information postpartum. And I just felt like our world needs this information. It is so, so important for so many reasons. Our children are our future, you know, and how we conceive them, how we grow them in our bellies, like it all matters. It's really creating their fundamental experience of self from that moment of conception, and even our preparation beforehand. And so how to really do that with more consciousness and more intention, and how to thrive during our pregnancy. And postpartum in the West, we hear of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and postpartum hair loss, and all the imbalances is what we know of as postpartum. And it's like, wait a minute, nature didn't design it to be that way. It's not, we're not meant to go through such a profound rite of passage and then suffer and struggle and not have a container to hold us. And so I just feel like Ayurveda, it's a necessity in and how to integrate that into our more modern life. It needs to be more available and more easily accessible for women.
I hear you. And one of the things that I did love about your book was that you kind of start with conscious conception. So a lot of, I think, the fertility books or information that we have is in sort of managing imbalances that are becoming more and more common right now, of people
Yeah.
having a difficult time getting pregnant,
Mhm.
holding pregnancies, being comfortable during pregnancy. But what you're
Mhm.
pointing to is something that is kind of a really big part of Vedic philosophy, which I'd love to hear more from you about that, what you've learned through your traditions. But what do you mean when you point to what Ayurveda says about conscious conception?
Conscious conception.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like what you said earlier, like even that can be a whole book, and diving into what it means is to come together as a couple and open that space of wanting to invite a soul into mama's womb and ultimately our life, and preparing all of the different fields of life, whether it's definitely focusing on the dynamics of your relationship, and is there any tension or discord there that needs to be smoothed out to create more fertile soil for the baby to land in? What about my relationship with work, my relationship with food? Are there any things inside of me that need to be worked on? Do I need to bring more consciousness, more awareness to parts of me that get triggered easily? Or respond or react from places of anger. Or so looking at the field of our life, the field of our body, the field of our womb, and see how can I clear this space and then cultivate it with more intention so that it can be a really sattvic or pure landing place for the soul to come into. And based on our environment, Ayurveda says we invite in a very specific soul. And so, I mean, even modern science is beginning to see how, like, epigenetically, at the moment of conception, the different genes are actually being passed on to this child. So based on mama's mood and the dynamic of her relationship with her partner. And it's like everything matters. And what Ayurveda encourages us to do is to just pay more attention, become more aware of the subtleties. And so where modern medicine or Western medicine focuses more on like the body and what are the issues with your uterus or your ovaries, it's right, Ayurveda kind of zooms out to a bigger picture. And I really believe everything starts in the subtle realm before manifesting in the gross. And so to explore the whole field of our lives and see where is there dissonance, where is there discord, what traumas am I still holding in my body that might be keeping me from opening to receive life. And so it's really, really all of that, cultivating the field.
And one of the things that I wrote about in my book is the sort of the tradition of a cleanse, like, so balancing the doshas before getting pregnant. Is that something that you teach or do with your people?
Yeah, definitely. It's said that 6 months prior to conception, we should really start to prepare the field. And the first 3 months of those 6 months is a period of cleansing. And so during that time, and we know if anybody's done a cleanse, when you cleanse your body, you're not just cleansing your body. It's all of the toxins are stored in our fat, but also all of our memories are stored in our fat. And so you're cleansing more than just the physical body when you do a cleanse. And so 3 months out of those 6, the first 3 months is that period of cleansing. And it's just very simple food. If you can do panchakarma during that time, abstaining from things that distract you or that pull you into a state of disconnection or discord. And then 3 months after that is a time of nourishing. And so really building your tissues and cultivating more ojas, more prana, to really be that vibrant, open, soft, and more subtle field for the baby to land in.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed in my community over the years, Dhyana, is a lot of women, they start looking to Ayurveda when they find that they are pregnant. Like, people suddenly realize, wow, like my body is about to go through this thing, and I want to do it in a way that has a spirituality behind it and a holistic sense of being healthy. So, like, I'm also sensitive to our listeners who didn't have this information or didn't have the opportunity to kind of do this conscious conception that you talk about. So what would you say for these people?
Thank you so much for being so sensitive to consider that, because it's huge. And oftentimes, most often in our days, that's how we find out that we're pregnant, is like, oh, wow, okay. And even when we were consciously conceiving my first child, and even when I found out I was pregnant, there was a whole period of like, what did I do? My whole life is about to change. And so knowing that, like, our first thought when we have our baby in our body is going to affect the baby, it can be like, oh gosh, I can't have any bad thoughts, or I can't have any bad moods, or where it's like, wait, that's not the reality. First things first, and I talk about this in my book, is that baby comes when it's time. We think that we can plan and prepare and chant all day and wear white and create this perfect environment and then make love and we're going to be pregnant. It's like we think that we're planning things, but again, Ayurveda says that we are not the doer. We are not the doer. We show up and we do our best in every moment, but ultimately everything that happens, it's divinely sanctioned. It's because it's perfect. And so baby comes when it's time, when it's the perfect, like, how could something so huge happen by accident? And if we really live yoga and Ayurveda, we know that nothing happens by accident. Every experience is medicine. Every single experience is medicine. and an opportunity for us to grow and to deepen and to shift in the ways necessary to meet life as it is now. And so when baby comes, it's because it's time for baby to come, whether you planned it or not. It's the perfect time for you to enter into this experience. And whatever is coming up, whether it's guilt or shame or wishing it could have been different or you could have done more, those things are coming up because when baby comes, it's purifying. It's like being a mother is the deepest path of growth and healing and transformation I've ever been on in my life. And as soon as baby's there, that begins. And so baby can begin to stir up all those parts of us that feel guilty or ashamed or think that if only things were different, then it would be better, or I would be better, or life would be better. It's like, wait a minute, no, like all of these ideas are what is keeping me from feeling whole and connected and complete. And so as much as possible, whatever situation you're in, you know, a lot of mamas have also been trying to conceive for years and years, and they haven't yet had their baby in their womb. And some mamas just found out, you know, God, I'm pregnant. Like it's not the right time and it feels horrible. And it's like baby comes when it's time, whether we're ready or not. And whatever is stirring inside of us, it's a great opportunity for us to heal in deeper ways than we ever knew possible, and to ultimately move into a place of acceptance of like the perfection, the ultimate perfection of life, even when it may not feel good. Can I trust that somehow this is happening for me and not to me? And that every experience is an opportunity to grow.
I feel like that there's a distinction in what you're saying between the perfection that the mind craves, you know, like my idea of what a perfect conception and a perfect pregnancy is, and perfect timing, versus you're talking about sort of divine perfection, the kind which may sometimes appear to us in the moment as crappy timing, but you're saying it's happening for a reason, right? In order to inspire a certain growth or a certain realization.
Yeah. And I believe that that is the reality, though I also believe that as a practice, if I can practice trusting that everything is happening for me, not to me, we grow in our life. I feel like it's one of the most powerful mindset shifts to cultivate so that we can actually keep growing. It's like we become pilgrims in our life.
Yeah. And I would say pregnancy and motherhood must be such a pilgrimage.
Like deeply, profoundly. Yeah, it's like it's the most incredible thing I've experienced.
So with those who I'm sort of channeling, you know, the people I've met over the years who are looking to kind of get involved, you know, they're pregnant. I think we probably also have a lot of listeners whose kids are, say, you know, 5, 10, 15. You know, if these people were like totally inspired, they want to bring Ayurveda into their mothering and also into the care of their body at this stage, what are some of the things that you would suggest?
Well, in our mothering experience and in the more subtle ways, not so, I mean, I guess it's very practical too, but I feel like it's cultivating that gap between stimulus and response. You know, we have so many habitual ways of acting and of being. We crave something and we go for it, even if it's not what ultimately serves, or something happens and we get triggered and we yell, or whatever our habits are. Usually it's however we were raised or we were treated. And so I feel like as a mother, to be on that healing journey is absolutely necessary. And so the practice of creating that gap between stimulus, something happening, my child throwing something or doing something or saying something, instead of just reacting, just like that gap. How do I want to respond? How do I want to be in the situation? And I feel like that is Ayurveda. Ultimately, it's just that gap that allows us the free will to choose rather than just live mechanically or robotically in our world. And I feel like with our children, especially, that's like the healing that they provide is first, the opportunity to love more deeply than I've ever loved before. But second, the many, many opportunities to hit those parts of myself. My husband said it so beautifully once. He said, our children are so alive. They're so alive to life. So they touch those parts of ourselves that have died. And they always just, you know, they want to play and do and be engaged. And it's like, I don't want to, I don't feel like it. It's like those parts of me that have like died to that aliveness to life. And so the healing work that they provide is profound if we can enter into motherhood as that journey to keep growing and keep healing and keep responding with more intention, with more attention, and with more love, so that we don't create those same patterns within them. You know, I feel like our role as mothers is to find our wholeness, you know, which means to heal those parts of ourselves that have felt unworthy of love, and to heal ourselves so that we can raise humans that are more whole than we are. They don't have to feel those wounds and then spend their entire, so many of us are spending our entire adult lives healing from the trauma of our childhoods. And so what if our children didn't have to do that? Like, what more could they create in the world? And then on a more practical level, I would say nervous system support for mama is kind of everything. And, you know, there's so many ways to do that, whether it be more rhythm and routine in your own life, more nourishing, grounding, like really vata pacifying foods. But also, like, my number one support through motherhood has been Abhyanga, oil massage, and herbal baths. I feel like anytime I'm just feeling edgy or more reactive, it's like I just know my nervous system needs, it's like more of that space between me and the world around me. And I feel Abhyanga is like one of the most profound practices for me to
like
care for myself.
Applying oil to your skin, actually, I'll describe that like a force field, or you know, that you
Totally.
put around you for your nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with your herbal baths, Dhyana, do you have any favorite herbs that are going in your bath right now?
I did a whole blend. I have a business called Ayurveda Mama Box, which is just a beautiful place for mamas to find all things needed for preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. And there's a beautiful herbal bath blend in there with, gosh, probably like 10 to 12 different herbs. But if I'm going to do a simple bath, I basically just put like a big handful or a cup of rose petals into a French press and make a really, really strong tea. I then pour it in the bath. And that's like, I think, my simple go-to for an herbal bath. It's just very, very easy and really, really beautiful. Rose helps us to integrate emotions in a way that really soothes the heart. And so rose, I feel like, is an amazing ally for the entire journey of motherhood.
I
Also
can
brings
see how
beauty.
I feel like that's the rose would help one be less reactive
Yeah.
by helping
Yeah.
digest emotions.
Totally. And also to create the healthy boundaries necessary to protect what is beautiful. Like, that's like a rose with all of its thorns. It's like to create those healthy boundaries, which children need, you know, children need that healthy container. And so do we. Like, we can't always be playing or doing this. Like, we need to create healthy boundaries in our life to protect what's beautiful, what's sacred.
Oh,
So
that is so
amazing
dreamy.
ally.
So dreamy. Love that. I am thinking I feel like I'm the I'm like the practicality police today. I'm thinking about our listeners who do notice that they are reactive,
Yeah.
you know, and having trouble finding that space between something just triggering me and then me, you know, lashing out or being super
Yeah.
annoyed or, you know, whatever that knee-jerk response is.
Yeah.
So say we have a person where they're noticing that's happening. Is there a
Yeah.
practice or is there some kind of a thing like aromatherapy? Is there something that you go
Mm.
to with your community for moments like that?
Yeah, I mean, for every person, it's so unique. And I feel like it's for each one of us to discover what nourishes me. Like, what really nourishes me? When I do it, do I feel more connected to myself? And so for some people, it's, you know, an abhyanga and a bath. For some people, it's just taking a little bit of time by themselves. For other people, it's, you know, it can be so many different things that can support one in feeling more anchored and more connected to themselves. And so I'd say my number one tip is to discover that. And then also, you know, it's like I could do an abhyanga and take a bath, but like just like slap the oil on me and like take a bath and zone out. And so it's like we can do really nourishing things, but not allow ourselves to be nourished by them. It's like we can eat an amazing meal and then finish it and realize like, wow, I didn't really even taste that. Or we can like see an amazing sunset, but realize like, wow, I wasn't actually really there. And so we can do, X, Y, and Z, and I did it all perfectly. But if we don't allow ourselves to be in a receptive space, which I think as moms, it's very easy to get into a more masculine place of just like doing everything. But how important it is for us to like become receptive, to really receive the nourishment that's available in every moment, actually. And that's something that I've been practicing lately is like, I might need like an afternoon of rest, but I might not have a whole afternoon to rest. And so what I'm taking now is like the moments of rest and realizing that if in those moments, rather than distracting myself by like social media or this or that or the other thing, I take the moment, to turn to the north and say, the greatest medicine, my Lord, is to just be with you. Mm-hmm. And, whether it's God or the universe or nature or whatever it is that's very personal to you that you connect with, that ultimately is what nourishes us. If we can, in the moments of rest that we have, if we can actually allow ourselves to receive the nourishment that as mothers we so desperately needs, because a nourished mother is what is it's like we overflow and that's what our children receive. But if we're dry, it's like you can feel it in the home. Like a mother is so powerful. The energy that she holds is so powerful. And so the necessity of her being nourished, it's huge. It's huge. And so I'd say that probably the number one thing is find what nourishes you and then let yourself be nourished by it. And if you don't have a lot of time, it can literally be in the moments of space that you do have, rather than distracting yourself and doing things that ultimately deplete you. How can I turn to what actually supports me and let myself be supported by it?
Yeah, that's huge. I hear a lot the sentiment that there isn't enough time to nourish myself. So I hear you saying there's these moments that maybe like a few seconds, but if you open to it in that moment, then it's there, the nourishment.
Totally. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's always those moments in the day. It's like whether your kids are napping or if they're playing for like, a few minutes before they start fighting. It's like just to take those moments. And I think that's also why I was able to write this book in the first year of my son's life, was because becoming a mom made the reality of time so much more acute, of just, wow, like the sacredness of space. And when I have time, it's like, I want to do something meaningful with it. I don't want to waste any time because time becomes so precious. And that's the reality of our life. We don't know how much time we have. But before I had a child, I had so much time. I had so much time in my life where suddenly I didn't. And so in those moments of time that I did have, I was like, I want to do something meaningful, do something, actually valuable.
Yeah. Would you write in like tiny increments during that year?
I would somehow wake up when it was dark outside still, and I would write for the hours before he woke up. So that's how I got through it.
Yeah. Early morning writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, like, it's like I would like to be able to do that now, but that book was meant to be written through me during that time, because it's like not something that I would have done with my own willpower necessarily. Like it sounds great. I would love to write another book this year, but it was a bigger calling for sure.
Right. Right. I hear from a lot of colleagues also that have books in them and their kids are still young,
When
and
they
they're
get older.
stalled out at 20,000 words for 4 years. And
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
That
totally.
timing.
And
Mhm.
the nights are just unpredictable, And so that's how also I'm like, I don't know how I did it in that first year, because my son would wake up like 4 to 8 times a night. And so now I'm just like, if I can rest, I want to rest. And so it's just like different things are needed at different times, and so I trust that.
Right. And I'm going to guess that for you, those hours of writing were nourishing in similar way that sleep
Totally.
would be.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I think we get in Ayurveda land, I think it's easy to get tucked into this corner where nourishment means only certain things, that you read in an Ayurveda book. That nourishment
Yeah.
is, means you do, your 20 minutes of yoga and you eat this kind of food and, cleanse the senses and these sorts of things. But,
Yeah.
what I really feel from you is how personal that which nourishes you
Mm.
is.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah, that's what I love about Ayurveda, and I feel like it's something that you're able to share really well in your books is that, some people will be like, wait, that's not Ayurvedic, but it's like, wait, everything is Ayurveda. Like all of matter is Ayurveda, but it's just understanding its effect. And that's what makes something Ayurvedic. Just like understanding if I do this, then this is going to happen. If I eat red chili, like my pitta is going to increase. And then based on that knowing, like choosing consciously. And that's what an Ayurvedic lifestyle is. It's understanding the effects and then being empowered to make the right decision, meaning like a decision that actually serves your state of balance rather than bringing us more into a state of dis-ease. And so everything is Ayurvedic. And so just understanding nature ultimately, and then being able to engage with life consciously.
right, right. I heard you say that sort of your top tip is to find what nourishes you.
Find what nourishes you and let yourself be nourished by it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Without, any judgment of
Yeah,
what it is that we find when we open that
totally.
door.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because for some people, it's like, eating ice cream, there can be so much guilt or shame attached to it, which keeps us from actually enjoying it. But if we could
Mhm.
let go of the guilt and shame and have that bowl of ice cream, and every bite, we just close our eyes and it fills every cell with joy and that like juice of life. It's like how incredible. So it's not what it is, but letting go of guilt and shame and actually letting yourself receive whatever it is that will nourish you, will actually nourish you.
Yeah.
And then your body will tell you, like, hey, that actually didn't feel so good. And then we listen and we do it different next time.
Yeah. Reminds me of what you said
Yeah.
about what your husband said about how kids are so alive. If you think about how a kid eats an ice cream cone, that's
Yeah,
how we want to be.
totally. Yeah, and then they also stop when they're done,
Yep.
it's like their relationship with pleasure isn't so conditioned yet. And so it's like they're just, yeah, they're alive to life, which Ayurveda supports us in doing, becoming more alive in our relationship with life.
So you wrote this book, it sounds like, in a sort of sacred window of your life. Uh,
Absolutely.
do you think you'll write more? Is it like a big part of what you are drawn to?
Yeah, I have a book in my mind, in my heart, that I believe will come through. And it's really about, so many mamas have read my book and then they reach out and they're like, what about now? Like after you have the baby, how do you stay nourished? And so I feel like that would be a really beautiful gift for mothers is during those, the season of mother, really,
Yeah.
which could be, however long you're really deeply engaged in serving your children. I know it's forever, but there's a season of life where it's really full on and really intense, how to stay nourished practically during
Mm.
those times. And so I
Hmm.
feel like that will be the next book that comes out
Oh, that will
when
be
it's
a great book and super useful. And
hmm
not just postpartum, like fourth trimester, but it's
like
longer than that.
yeah, I have an almost 5-year-old and it's like still it's like how to stay nourished. And I have an almost 2-year-old and maybe more babies coming in the future. And so it's just like how to stay nourished during this season of
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah. And I've worked with a lot of people who I'll see them when their babies are 5. It's like it's been 5 years since they've had a baby and they're still
Yeah.
in a postpartum situation. Like they're
Yeah,
still they're dealing with imbalances or changes that started 5 years ago.
totally.
I do think that it's Ayurveda has so much to offer for that particular time of life.
Absolutely. And I feel
Yeah.
like oftentimes also because that postpartum window isn't really honored as the sacred transition that it is.
Yeah.
A lot of mamas are still trying to find themselves after so many years of motherhood because they didn't take that time to really honor. It's like the rite of passage. Traditionally, when becoming an adolescent, boys would go into the woods on a vision quest by themselves at, 11 or 12 years old to become a man. And so it's like to become a mother, like that art of becoming. And our culture is so lost. We see mothers at coffee shops when their babies are 6 days old because they want to just be normal again, when there's not really the understanding that, wait, everything has changed and you're meant to be changed by these changes, and let yourself be changed. You're in a process of becoming. And it's such a potent time, the sacred window, the postpartum window, that in our culture just isn't honored. And so I feel like oftentimes, there is that grieving period that comes with any big change, whether it's like a big move or a big job change or the loss of a loved one or the welcoming of a baby. It's like everything is changing. There's time to grieve what has been lost. And now it's like we're medicated as like, wait, you're depressed. And postpartum depression is this big thing where, what if mama's just had the space to grieve the changes that were happening? Like, would she still be stuck? Maybe, maybe not. But I do feel like oftentimes, because we're not honoring this big change, this huge, one of the biggest changes a woman will go through, whether it's her first baby or her fifth, it is a time to grieve what has been lost and to step into, who am I now? And everything has changed. My relationship has changed. My relationship with the world, everything changes during that sacred window.
Absolutely. Similar to menopause. I think we could
Yeah.
take that whole conversation and put that there also.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because I know we have people listening in all stages of life. And I think that what you're saying about change and the naturalness and the inevitableness of change it's such a grace. It's such a graceful thing. And
It takes grace.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love how you embody this. I've been lucky enough to be
Mhm.
around some bhakti yogi swamis over the years. And there's something coming from
Mhm.
you that reminds me of these people and these
Aw.
places. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm like,
Wow.
okay,
Thank you, Kate.
that yoga works.
Aw. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kate.
Yeah.
Aw.
So I want to encourage people to help them find you. And if they're seeking some of that yoga, capital Y, what's the best way for people
Mm.
to look out for you and what are you up to?
Well, two main ways: AyurvedaHealthRetreat.com. And we have
Mm.
so many group retreats planned. We have monthly cleanses, like group cleanses. We have so many different group trainings and retreats, as well as if you want a personal retreat, you can book that for yourself. And then the other main place is Soul Space, which is our online community for yoga and Ayurveda, where my
Mm.
sister and I both teach weekly yoga classes. Our dad leads a daily meditation every morning. And then we have different workshops and Ayurvedic journeys and all sorts of different series that happen live, but also are archived for you to experience whenever you want. And that's a monthly membership platform. And so just a beautiful online space so that we can stay connected with you while you're journeying
Mm.
through life.
Amazing. Definitely going to check out the Ayurveda Health Center. I love how
Yeah,
close that is. And all of these things we'll also put in the show notes. Folks who are listening, can I ask you 3 rapid fire questions?
sure.
All right. So, what is the first thing you do when you get up in the morning?
Besides like tongue scraping and teeth brushing, or does that count as the first thing? That's
That
always
does count as the
taking
first
yoga.
thing. Maybe it's obvious
Okay.
if you want to give us another one.
Well, I do my tongue scraping, my teeth brushing, and then usually my little girl is up with me, and we light a candle on our altar and we offer incense every morning.
How about what is the first food you put in your body?
That's different every day. And so usually it's dependent on what the kids feel like for breakfast. This morning it was almond butter and jam sandwich.
Great. And what's your wind down routine, your evening routine?
Also with the kids, we do kirtan every night. And my husband plays the mridanga. And so we have and our kids just love to dance around the whole house. And it's the sweetest thing in the world. And then we read 2 books. And then we listen to a Krishna story, which there's a whole audio series, mine with Krishna stories. And that's when the lights are out and fall asleep.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that little window into your family life with
Thank
us.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
And thanks
much,
for
Kate.
being here today. And I encourage everybody to find out more. And again, your book, Ayurveda Mama, just came out this spring. So
Yeah.
that is also a fantastic resource. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Kate.